Okay. So thank you guys for joining me again this week. I feel like last week we had some really good conversation and discussion. And this week, the hope is to take it up another notch with some deeper, a little bit more in-depth questions. We got some different people with us this time, so thank you guys for joining us. First thing I want to do, just to get everybody familiar off the bat, those of you who weren't with us last week, can I have you just share your name, where you're from, and then why you were interested in joining this conversation today?
Justin. I live in Granville, grew up in Kentwood, Michigan. I work with Kaylin. We're both trainers at Farmers. I wanted to do this because you can only kind of get so far with social media without actual human interaction and people on the ground kind of doing something. And I didn't really know how. So it was more of and I kind of reached out to Kaylin of, hey, is there anything I can do? Like, I don't understand. There's a lot of stuff that I don't understand on my end. So I can't really help if I don't know the entire whole picture, if that makes sense.
I'm Jamie. I live in Grand Rapids, but I'm from Grand Haven, Michigan. And I wanted to join because I'm hearing from that this was going to be a conversation derived from Kaylin, but with people that Kaylin knows. I knew it would be an emotionally safe space for me to talk and hear other people's personal thoughts and feelings about things that are going on in the world that are really important and that need to be talked about.
And I'm Zachary Enzavino, her husband. Yeah, I'm excited to you just continually learn more and share perspectives and create some sort of actionable item. I have family and other people in my life who stand on different sides of the issue as I do, and the more information and knowledge and fire that I have behind me will help me. I have people that I need to change minds of, so that's part of this discussion for me, for sure.
So, as I said last time, if we're just being transparent, it was just myself and friends. We're all Black. And like I said, we don't speak for the Black community. And I would imagine that hasn't changed just because we've invited other people into the conversation. So just like we don't speak for the entire Black community, I'm sure you guys won't speak for everybody that is white. Since you guys are just joining us, wanted to kind of start off with what your perspective is, just in general, with the current state of our society and where we're at. Zach, I'll let you kick it off.
So, I mean, where we are isn't new, right? I mean, this is built up and has crescendoed before in the past. This country has a very poor history of treating any minority group poorly, and especially with the Black community. You look at where some of the first police forces started from to, how they've acted throughout our short history, and how things haven't really changed as much as we think some people think they have.
And just in general, the question is, how do I feel about everything?
Yeah, just in general, how are you feeling?
I feel devastated for so many people. I don't know how much I can really say because I get really emotional, because my heart is so broken for all of the injustice and pain. I guess that's how I feel. I feel heartbroken.
And I think a lot of people kind of feel the same from what I get is confused, scared, yet motivated. Um, and it can be for different things. Kind of scared because they want to do something, but there's still this COVID stuff going on, you know. So how do you do it? Yet be smart about it to protect your family with that. Confused of, like I said with myself, I want to do something to help, but from my knowledge and from my experiences, I don't know how. So confused on that way. Other people can be completely scared and confused for other ways, and that's completely fine. For me, that's kind of what I had. And when I say yet motivated, I say that because in the conversations I have with people now and people that I've been talking to, for the first time, and kind of what Destiny said, for the first time, there are people who kind of get it now. I think that didn't before, and now they're motivated to, hey, this can't keep happening. When before it was, it's just kind of the same old, same old. This is how life is. Um, but for the first time, are seeing it from a different lens, or just coming to terms or realizing it, however you want to say it. There are tons of people that I've seen it either on social media, friends or family of mine that I've talked to, colleagues I've talked to that are uh, looking at it at a different way for the first time ever. Which all again because they've never kind of thought like this. They're confused and scared for different ways too, right? Of what am I supposed to do and how do I do that? Now, with that said, I always think, and I know Zachary kind of mentioned there's people in his family who think in him, and you guys may have the same, and I certainly have that too, and some of my family members. Um, and I always have to take a step back and remember that not everybody evolves the same at the same speed, unfortunately, right? Um, so there's things I can talk to them about or show them and kind of get them there, but it just may take longer, and I have to realize that it doesn't matter what we're talking about, whether we're talking about 100 years ago, or they're talking about gay rights or women's rights, while we're talking about um, people liking Tom Brady, right? Whatever it happens to be, it takes a while for people to. Not everybody is just going to jump right on, and it's going to take a while for them to evolve, and everyone goes at different speeds. So I have to know that even if you come up with some sort of action plan and it's going to and it doesn't work right away for everyone, that I can keep pushing and keep trying because it may just take them more time is all. So.
But I'll open this up to everyone now. And feel free to jump in and speak in whatever order you choose. I'm not going to call you out. But the thing that's on my mind, or was on my mind earlier, was we hear things all the time about all lives matter, or there are good cops out there. I know some. I've got black friends, or what about black on black crime? All these kinds of things that we hear, right? And it seems to come up because we're justifying racism, or we're justifying inequalities. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's not an exclusionary statement, as you said. It's like Black Lives Matter because disproportionately they, or disproportionately you see that through healthcare, law enforcement, through our legal system, through most of our institutions, that the same opportunities and the same difficulties from the black community to the white community it's not the same. There are different hurdles that I don't experience on a day-to-day basis or ever. I have struggles in my life, right? And I know my life matters, but I know that saying Black Lives Matter has no bearing on whether or not my life matters. So I don't. I find it confounding that that is an exclusionary statement. Because yeah, just there's many posts out there. Just by saying, like, if my wife asked me if I loved her, and I said, well, I love everybody. Like, okay, maybe I love everybody, but it's not really about that right now, right? It's about that I love my wife. So it's important that we acknowledge that the same opportunities are given to everybody, and the same, yeah, it's unequal. It's ultimately, and then with your the police statement, um, there are plenty of great cops, and I think law enforcement serves a purpose in this country. But the purpose that but you can't have that many bad eggs in an institution like that. There has to be a stronger hand on the back of law enforcement that does not make this okay. We've seen too many times, it doesn't matter the race, we've seen too many times where police overstep their bounds and they're killing somebody for a simple, and it might be illegal, but it's not something worth being killed over. A $20 counterfeit bill, selling CDs, selling cigarettes. I mean, how could you argue that that is worth being killed over, even if you're resisting arrest, or even if you weren't being the quote unquote most model citizen that you could be in that, and even if when you are, they're being killed. It's unacceptable ultimately, and to in order to understand, or in order to enact change, you have to acknowledge that there's something that needs to be changed. You can't just say, well, there are a lot of great cops, and that's great. A lot of great cops sat back and watched it happen. So if they're not going to do that, that just can't be the case.
So it's full circle to me. Kind of funny that like now police departments and family of police officers or police officers themselves are upset that there's this narrative right now that we need to defund the police, or we just this narrative around police officers. Well, the the reality is they're upset, right? They're upset. There's name calling. They don't like the disrespect. They don't like that they're not trusted. And that's the same thing that Black people have been screaming at the top of our lungs for years. We don't like the disrespect. We don't like to be not trusted, the name calling, and the immediate assumption of who we are, the character that's within, right? And the truth of the matter is that it's just a few bad apples, as you just said, Zach. It's like only a few bad apples. And the same with the Black race, the white race, whatever race, you will always have a few bad apples. But we've been conditioned to group a few bad apples to then label a whole entire race or label a whole group of people as thugs or gang, just gangs and all of this stuff. So another thing is like ultimately it's a loss of power. They're afraid of like not having power. To your point, like aside from just brutality, just the language and the volatile just treatment that you get by simply getting pulled over and being assumed or being talked to in a demeaning way, they're afraid to lose that power, and that's the reality of it. And so I want to kind of jump back, and we can stay on this topic, but jump back to the beginning when Justin, I think you were like saying like, I want to help, but I don't know how, or there are questions that are like, I just have questions, but it's not a blueprint. It's not a checklist of like, here are the things, the questions you need to answer. Here's a study book of like what you need to answer, what you need to do to effectively help us. To Zach's point, it's historical, it's history. There are policies. You look at the housing policies, right? And the places that they are saying are high violence areas are often low income areas. And why are they low income areas? Because we've been blocked from purchasing housing in other areas that would be considered mixed race areas if we were not allowed to if we couldn't, you know, get mortgages in certain areas. So I say all that to say is like we need to attack policy. Like we have to attack policy, and yes, marching and protesting is great, but the true power of white people in my mind is really to stand up to policy change, and if and use that privilege, use white privilege as a gateway to kind of remove the barriers that are in place. Sorry if I'm on a rant. I've literally been talking about race all day, but to me, when I was in a conversation earlier and the question was posed, I was like, well, I'll just, you know, ask my white friends or white people that I know, is just like question them. If they say something, I'll take them down the rabbit hole. Like, why do you think that? Why do you think that? And then someone else said, well, really, why don't the true allies run for school boards, or why don't the true allies run for county commission, and why don't true allies do all of like run for positions of power to then open doors for people of color and black people to kind of enter in? So that got my mind thinking. I was like, well, yeah, it takes it from the introspective stance and pushes it to more of an actionable stance, to where you can actually see change.
You know, how about how there's good cops out there, you know, even though there are some bad ones, which that statement always annoyed me because even if you put a bad apple in a bucket of good apples, what happens, right? Um, or I got black friends, or what about black on black crime? All these things that come up in response to racism, as if we're justifying it. And just if any thoughts you had on that.
Well, yeah, of course, you know, it's all those responses are, you know, they basically kind of justify a racist thought or a racist action. Um, and I guess I would feel like basically all those responses are pretty much crap. Like especially like well, I have black friends. Um, I cannot stand that statement because um I mean, a lot of times those black friends um either don't exist or they're friends that also accept the crap or you know may have grown up in a I guess the area, you know, that is predominantly white, and so then they've been accepted by the white community because they're not like the other blacks, and so you know they become that black friend who lets them say the n word, and you know, and basically um also you know kind of accepts the like, well, I mean, that's just how it is, you know, in America, you know, instead of um you know, I guess fighting on the right side of the issue. And so that's why that statement like really, you know, just annoys me. Because a lot of times those black friends, like I said, either don't exist or not, I guess would be I would say credible. Um and I mean, and also it doesn't really matter because a racist statement and a racist thought is is racist no matter how you feel about it. Like racist is racist, um is not subjective, and so people like yeah like people like to justify it, and I think how you feel about it is subjective, but you know racism is racism. Cultural appropriation is cultural appropriation. Like people try to say like someone isn't cultural appropriating because I don't know, no one's offended by it. or a certain group isn't offended by it, I mean, that's subjective. Like cultural appropriation is cultural appropriation, no matter what. Like by definition, if this is happening, then it is cultural appropriation. But like I said, the way you feel about it is subjective. Racism is racism. Um, and so then like, people will try to be like, well, well, my black friend, he doesn't he's not offended, if I say the N word. He's not offended if I don't know, I do whatever's racist. And so yeah, that's I just like I said, I just hate that
Asking
statement.
because we were being killed at such a more rapid pace than any other races. Like that was the only thing that we were asking for, just to show white people that our lives matter. Like we weren't just a person that you could just like kill and like no one would miss. Like we matter. Like, and it's just so frustrating. Like we're not saying no one else, like your lives doesn't matter, but we're asking you to like see us as a human being and not like an animal where you could just gun down in the street. So like that's what's the most frustrating thing about the all lives matter versus the black lives matter is like we're just asking for equality. Like that's it. Like that's the one thing that we're asking for.
Torian, yeah, when you were saying like my one black friend says it's not racist, I think that's exactly what, or like that goes right into what Kaylin said earlier about how we can speak based on our experience and have a racial like understanding, but that doesn't mean we speak for everyone of that race, right? So I might maybe I'm offended by something, but that doesn't mean that it's offensive to everybody. Same as if it's not offensive to somebody doesn't mean it's not offensive to somebody else. I like one person doesn't decide when something is offensive. It's a group thing. Um, and then Kaylin, you also said like some people bring up the black on black crime as like, well, why aren't people upset about that? And I think generally people are upset about any crime on crime. Doesn't matter the race. But the issue right now isn't black on black crime isn't because the one black person hates the other person because they're black. Like that's a different issue. The issue right now is that a black person is killed by a police officer more often because they're black. And yeah.
Shameless plug. If no one has read Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, you should read it. My job right now, we're doing a book study on it, but it's a super good book about just training our minds to be anti-racist versus just saying like I'm not racist. And even like reading the book, I saw some of me in here. And there's this like whole notion like I'm black, I can't be racist. That's a really false narrative. So this book really debunks some of that, and some of like the examples that I had like were mentioned in here. But I know you guys mentioned like I want to learn more. I want to kind of deepen my knowledge. But this is a super good book, easy read, and super engaging. So
Yeah, so I just actually had a discussion with my ex-brother-in-law. He was watching my kids for me, so I picked him up, and we just had this discussion actually about the Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter thing, and Blue Lives Matter because that was a big thing for him too. Um, and the discussion kind of turned into you kind of saw, it was kind of weird because you kind of saw a light bulb of um, of course nobody's saying that, like Zachary said, that no lives matter. Of course all lives matter. That's not a thing. But that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about Black Lives Matter. And he said, well, what about the blue lives? They kill cops. They're killing cops right now. The protesters are killing cops right now. And I said, here's the difference, right? Is um, that person chose to be a cop and put themselves potentially in harm's way by protecting and serving, which is admirable to do. But also, he's only that way while he's at work, and then when he gets home, he just takes his uniform off, and he's just a regular dude then, or regular girl, right? Um, but I said, like, black people can't go home and just take off their skin, right? They're they're like that at work, and they're also like that at the grocery store, and out to the restaurant, and out with their friends, or anywhere. Right? They can't just say, "All right, I went to work, black, and I'm going to come home and not be anymore," like a police officer could do, and and I don't think he understood it in that way. And I decided that's how I'm going to explain it every time now, because it worked on Jethro basically. So I'm going to try it on everybody else. And I say Jethro because he had all lives matter, Lifess matter on his car. So I called him Jethro on purpose. But touring to what you were talking about with that one black friend. So I grew up in Kentwood. It was kind of mixed races of everybody. When I graduated, my last name is Nye Nyholt. The next person was an O'Gorman, and all the O guys. And before me were like 16 Nuents. So it was kind of all over the place. But there was certainly part of our group that lived on our street that was that one black friend that everybody had. But he was mostly not like you were talking about, where he was almost racist towards black people. He had become that way somehow, where he was kind of like, I can't believe what they're doing. It really wasn't really how you would think of how everyone's feeling right now. And he's still not right now, actually, on social media. He was that one black friend, but was he really, right? So, because he thought much different than even I did. And I don't know if maybe that was his experiences or whatnot. But again, that goes back to what Lauren was talking about. We can't put everybody in a group, in a bucket. We got to talk about individualism. So whether it's that one black friend compared to other black people, well, not all black people are in a bucket, right? We have to have that individualism, and not all the Jethros that have the all lives matter on um, are going to again evolve at the same rate as what this light bulb just popped on his head too. So yeah, so we kind of have to almost work on the individualism part of it.
What I was going to say was, I found that whole my black friend, or like even tokenism, to like reign true in the like the corporate, or like just the working world. When you have a black employee, it had been said to me like, yeah, you're black, but you're not like them. And I had to think about that, and it was like, what do you mean? And it's because basically, like, I did what I had to do to keep my job. And you would have some people come in and be like literally, you're not about to tell me to do this, or really just be like confident and just stand up for like what they are and what they're not going to do. Like, this is in my job title, and basically really push the envelope. And those types of people didn't last. But then you had me, who was like super compliant. It's like, yes, whatever you need, then they're like, we like you, we're going to keep you. And so then you have people like white people or any other people who put like that compliant black person as, this is what we like. We don't like those black people, the black people that will literally fight for their rights, literally. Like, and I had to leave that job because I found out that I was losing myself in that. And I was just like I couldn't believe, I think I was there for almost 10 years, how like just how much of me that I lost because I was really adopting whiteness. Like, I had whiteness characteristics in me, and I had to really check myself. So the environment that you're in can like change you. So to Justin's point, that black neighbor or person in your neighborhood probably was just around maybe white people all the time and didn't really grow up with Black people, thus took on the identity or took on the ideas and thinking of white people and looked at other Black people as like the same way white people view them. It's like, oh yeah, they are violent, they are disrespectful, they are thugs, and never really saw himself. So I definitely like get that.
It's kind of funny how Black individuals are lumped together. Like the Black community is everyone's the same in the Black community when it's convenient. But when we turn around and point the other finger, it's like, whoa, we're not all like all cops aren't bad. All white people aren't racist. Um, and so it's just interesting how when the shoe's on the other foot, you know, things don't seem to be as comfortable. Um, but I'll leave that there to close that out. Um, we got some people out there and probably some individuals who are watching this that can't fully wrap their minds around what's really going on. And we talked about this a little bit last week in terms of how we're helping educate them, so on and so forth. There's a quick story I'll share with you though. A couple weeks ago, my sister was telling me about a time she was at a grocery store, I believe, recently, and she was shopping, I think, for some vegetables or something like that. And she reached over to grab some olives, and there was a white lady that was across the aisle or on the other side of where the olives were. And this woman does not know my sister. My sister does not know her. They had never met before. And the white woman says to my sister, "Oh, I didn't know you eat olives." And instantly, obviously, that turns my sister off because she's like, "Well, of course you didn't, because you don't know me." But I think everyone on this call, everyone listening to the sound of my voice, understands what's happening here. The simple fact that what's really being said is, I didn't know that Black people ate olives, right? And my sister responds essentially saying to her, like of course you didn't know I ate olives. Like you don't know me, and also letting her know that that's offensive. Like you can't say those kinds of things. And she was just the woman was just a smiley and just seemingly as giddy as can be. Like, oh well, I didn't mean it like that. Well, how did you mean it? Um, why is that an assumption that you would make? But what's more concerning than the thought is the fact that you even have the gall to say it out loud, comfortably, comfortably. So for those,
Okay.
for those, yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
I was gonna say something similar happened to me at Meyer. I was putting my groceries on a belt, and the lady in front of me turned around and said, "Who's your caseworker?" Like I was getting food stamps and paying for my food with food stamps. And I remember, and this was like a few years back when my like whole like social justice lens was not fully developed. And I remember like getting in my car and couldn't drive away. And I called my mom and I was like, "Mom, like this just happened and I didn't say anything and I should have. And like, I don't like what the heck?" And I just couldn't believe that the lady asked me who my caseworker was, as if even if I did have a caseworker, if I threw out the name, would you even know who it was? Like, so yes, like that happens to me frequently here.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane, and I'm glad you brought that up as well as another example, because if we're being honest, I feel like in a lot of instances, what we dish, we can take. So there's a lot of stereotypes out there about Black people. There's stereotypes about white people. There's stereotypes about every race. And if we're being honest with each other in all of our circles, those jokes have been had. Um, there's always a line that you can cross, whether you're in private or in public. But those jokes have been had, right? Black people, they love fried chicken, they love Kool-Aid, they love watermelon, all these things, right? Those are stereotypes. White people, they can't dance, they don't have rhythm, they don't season their food, right? That's not everybody, but there may be some truth to these stereotypes. And like I said, there's a line that we can cross both in private or in public with that. But at the end of the day, the problem still boils back to that we're dealing with is we're simply disliked for the color of our skin. Period. and white is normal. White is the standard by which, in some people's eyes, not every white person, but in some people's eyes, it's the barometer by which everyone should be living up to. And unfortunately for us, because we're not white, we'll never get there. We'll never get there. So alongside racial inequality, you have what's commonly referred to as white privilege. So what is white privilege to you, and what impact would you say it's had on our society?
I'll start. So, I mean, kind of what I said earlier. I mean, white privilege is that I don't ever have to consider my race when doing anything. Whereas I know that other minority groups don't have that same luxury. Like, again, white privilege is not that my life is intrinsically easier, or that I don't have struggles, or that I don't have hurdles, or I don't have things that I have to overcome and struggle with. But my race has no impact or bearing on those struggles that I'm having. Whereas, you know, based on my experience, I've seen it, you know, and I've read enough history, and I have had enough conversations with people that I trust that that's I'm willing to bet that all of my fellow brothers and sisters here probably have at least one example in their past where they've been judged on their something has happened because of their race that has prevented them from excelling or something.
I'll make it really easy. So the story, Ken, you said about your sister Lauren that you talked about the caseworker thing. That ain't ever happened to me. Not even close. So, in fact, when you were telling that story, Lauren, I was like, caseworker. I had to sit a minute and go, like, what is she talking about? Like, that's how dumb it is for me to even think that that can happen, because it's not even close. I've never ran into anything close like that. I've never went and picked out olives and somebody said something, right? Um, I mean, it just sounds so dumb, um, but just to hear that it happens, it's to people that are right in front of me. Um, I'll make it easy. So there's white privilege right there, right? Because that simple thing has never happened to me, and it sounds. I can't believe how, and this is partly me of what that can really happen. Like, because honestly, when Lauren was telling that story, I'm like, I don't understand what she's even saying. It took me a minute to wrap my head around what was going on. I was like, oh wow, that's terrible. And but yeah, I'm like, that would never. It's never even come. A, because I'm white and I'm a man, so I have like I'm two for two, right? I don't have any of those. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So yeah, so I'll make it easy. Those kind of things are just that we just talked about right now is simple. That's never happened to me, or even come close.
I mean, I guess they pretty much said it. Yeah, the fact that like Zach said, the fact that he does not have to consider his race um, when dealing with anything is white privilege. Like for me, being a black man, I have to consider the fact that I am black and consider the fact that I'm a black man. Like a black man right there. Like that's automatically seen as a threat. I remember I was like, I had to either be in like the fourth or fifth, anywhere between the fourth and sixth grade. Fourth and sixth grade. Okay. I'm walking home from school, and there was a shorter white man who was walking maybe about, I don't know, I'd say about 25, 30 feet in front of me. This is a grown man. Um, Periodically, he would turn around, he would give me this nervous smile, and then he would jog, for like 10 seconds. He did that probably about 4 times, so he ended up being like 100 feet in front of me. I'm like, I mean, even at that age, I'm like, really, this man is scared of me.
Poor
Like,
guy was exhausting his little lungs for nothing.
for nothing. I'm in the fourth, fifth, or sixth grade. I'm like, wow, and like that's probably one of the first like I guess realizations that I had about like me being a black man or a black boy, or me being black. Like this man is really scared of me. Like and he would just turn around, just and then just like just jog for like 15 seconds or whatever. I'm like, really? Like, and so, um, you know, white people don't really have to, deal with, with stuff like that.
It's crazy because when I think of white privilege, I think of the times that I'm in the car driving down the highway, and the speed limit's 70, and I'm doing 71. I could be doing 69. I could be doing 70. It really doesn't matter. But I'm going the speed limit, and there could be a state trooper on the side. There could be local authorities on the side, and knowing I've done nothing wrong, my tags are up to date, my lights work. Why am I experiencing heart palpitations? Why am I nervous? Why am I uncomfortable in my own car doing nothing wrong, just cruising down the highway? Why am I going up the street to get groceries and I can see, for example, Grand Rapids police chilling in the parking lot at Chipotle, clocking people as they go by, but knowing I've done nothing wrong, yet uncomfortable? Um, that's something that a lot of people experience, and even more so because if I were to jog through a predominantly white neighborhood, we've obviously recently seen what's happened in a scenario like that. Um, even in professionally working for certain organizations or certain companies, there's a certain way that we have to portray ourselves. There's a there's a certain amount of work that we have to put in, um, that white individuals don't necessarily have to. Um, and I don't think people fully grasp that. I don't think people fully get that. And here's the funny thing, and this is nothing against Justin. I'm just gonna using Justin because we work together. Um, but if it came down to it, and we were measuring his success and his performance versus my success and my performance, in my heart of hearts, I honestly believe, regardless of what we've accomplished, that I have to always stay on high alert to make sure that I can measure up, simply based on the fact of the way that I look. It doesn't matter how many suits and ties I wear. It doesn't matter how successful I've been in this role. At the end of the day, historically speaking, at least, because I'm a black man, a young black man at that, I'm instantly going to be categorized and put in a position where I'm not as good as Justin or any other white individual that I might be measured up against, simply based on the fact, and at least even if it's not true, that's the point I'm getting at. Even if it's not true, the fact that I have to have that mentality is white privilege in a nutshell.
I can tell you, since we do work together, I don't feel that. So there you go. There's your white privilege. I do get nervous around cops, but that's because I was a bad kid growing up, and I got so that's a different story.
White privilege is we in an all staff meeting. Well, one of my white colleagues do a whole soliloquy about drinks, whiskey, bourbon, blah blah blah, like to describe people. So when I think about you, I think about this drink, and it's like going back and forth, and it was like so like everybody else. Oh, this is so creative, so great. But I could not help but to think like if a black person came on here talking about you remind me of Hennessy, you remind me of Tito's, you remind and just start naming, they'll be like, excuse me, in the professional setting. So like it's just certain topics that I feel like we can't get away with doing. But like, you know, the white counterpart could be like, all right, everybody go get a drink. Like in the perfect world, I would totally love to lead a team and be like, yes, you can drink wine during the day. Don't be excessive. And but then you turn into like, this out of control kind of person. But that encounter, I was just shocked. I don't think I engaged during that part of the staff meeting because I was just in shock. But yeah.
Lauren, Ash, Destiny, Torian, tell me if I'm wrong, but I can guarantee you that at one point or another, as Black people, those instances have always come up. And for everybody white listening right now, those instances have come up. And I guarantee you, more often than not, Black people are always the ones in the room that pull back and are in shock that things like this are happening, especially in a professional setting. And the first thing that crosses our mind was, glad it wasn't us the one that leads with that or to start that conversation. Or we might not even mention it in that setting or in that meeting or participate, as Lauren just said. We'll talk about it when we get home amongst people who can relate and understand. Because had that been us, it would be a completely different day. I wouldn't be telling you about my day at work. I'd be telling you how I got let go or how I've been suspended or how I got, all kinds of things, right? That's the risk that we run and the things that we face that we don't share or talk about because in that moment, people won't get it. They'll be like, why aren't you joining in? Why aren't you talking about it? And I'm just using that voice, but we can't do that. We can't do it.
Kaylin, I was just thinking, like, even when COVID started and we were starting to work from home, the the amount of intentionality, like over and above, to prove that we were working, right? Like, I just remember, like, the first week, all of us packed in this room. We are working. We're documenting. Can you see this picture? Like, we're here. And I even have a friend that works for the state, and she's like, we literally have to have an Excel sheet and we have to say what we did minute by minute by minute by minute by minute because there's a lack of trust. And like that to me is just mind blowing that like the first part of COVID and us being quarantined, how on high alert I was. I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to prove that I'm working because they already think we slack. They already think we're lazy. They already think we have ass stuff. I'm just like, oh, what am I going to do? So yeah, that's a good point that you brought up, Kaylin. Is just like the pressures of trying to be 5 steps above to try to prove that you are actually worth it and worthy to be employed by a certain employer. Especially because like there's this wage disparity. There's just so much that we have to kind of deal with in order to stay employed. Like that's just wild to me.
So, like I said before, a lot of individuals have reached out to me um, asking what can they do to help. And we kind of took this discussion a little bit last week, but I wanted to revisit it and take it a step further. I don't know if, because we've only been talking for about an hour now, but I don't know if anything that we've said so far has helped or kind of given you some direction. But based off of what we talked about last week, one of the big takeaways was we're not necessarily, or Black individuals don't necessarily want the responsibility of being your guide to give you that direction. It's more so there's a human element here. What do you think? What do you feel like you should do? And maybe you don't have all the answers to that, and that's understandable as well. The question I have is, and I kind of want to start with Zach, Jamie, and Justin. Um, what, if anything, do you think could be done, or what responsibility do you feel like you have in making any advances or inciting any change?
You're reaching, Zach. All right. Let's try not to jump on me. All right. I did, first of all, this hour has been um, really cool to hear a different perspective on what's happening, right? That I'm not privy to normally. Because I'm white, I have a chance to talk to people who probably wouldn't listen to people here, right? I have a chance to talk and get through, potentially, at least try, um, to take. I guess I don't know if it's white privilege if I'm just talking to another white person, but I guess it kind of is because they probably wouldn't talk to you. So I have an opportunity to speak to. First of all, I'm learning right now too, but I have a chance to have conversations in an audience with people who I know will listen to me and actually take what I'm giving them and run with it. At least listen, and that's all I can ask for to start, I guess.
So I mean, a big thing that I can do is continue to be an advocate for all people and all minorities and Black people, and just like Justin said, is being willing to, you know, when you recognize something, is, you know, being willing to stand up for an individual who might. So, like Lauren, you said in your example, you know, you like sometimes you don't have a voice, right? Because you're scared of the judgment that can be pushed down on you. And I, as a white man, generally don't have. Well, I have that fear, but I don't have it. I know I don't have it in the same capacity, right? So I know that I can stand up and speak out, you know, in the workplace, in everyday life when I see things happening. You know, when there's, I can't think of a specific instance, but just looking at, you know, like little things that happen in a store, and if I were to oversee it and making sure that I'm willing to say something, you know, even if it's a little thing like, what are you thinking? Just making sure that I'm doing that. And then again, just educating my family, my relatives, you know, being vocal on social media, making sure that I am politically involved. You know, I making sure that I'm voting for the right people, and that I'm not just that I'm understanding what those politics represent, and also galvanizing other people to vote. You know, I know that there are people close to me in my life who agree with me, but don't think their vote makes a difference. And you know, you take 10,000 of those people that, you know, half the population doesn't vote, and I know that I hope to believe that most people are in agreement that we need to do better for everybody, and especially to the Black community. So just, I mean, just in my everyday life, and in everything that I do, is not being afraid to be that voice.
So I struggle personally with, and it's happening right now, I have all the feelings that I don't know how to funnel and utilize as, I have them all, I want to use them as fuel because I think passion is really powerful, but I get too overwhelmed. So I want to thank Lauren. I mean, I want to thank all of you. But firstly, Lauren, I did write down that book, and I'm going to read it because I think it's really important that for anybody who is like, I'm not racist, that's great. But it is time now more than ever to be absolutely like anti-racist. It's great that you're not racist, but being anti-racist is really important always, but I think now more than ever. And I'm going to work on channeling my emotions and feelings into words and actions because I struggle with that. And that's just like a personal journey of, I get so overwhelmed that I shut down. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say, I guess, on that for now. I always want to say a lot, but I don't know how to. Okay.
No, I think that's.
Oh, no, it's not you today. But I was gonna say, if you when you start reading it and you want to like have a book talk, call me because I love to have a conversation outside of work people about the book. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll hook up. Okay, that sounds good.
I mean, I think that's an important thing that you were saying because I know there are a lot of people that echo how you feel and the things that you just said. Couple people that I work with or have relationships with have said the same thing in terms of they fight the same fight. They share the same feelings, but they don't really know how to express it. They don't know how to channel it and funnel it to make it, at least seem productive, at least in the eyes of other people. Um, so that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. So you're not alone in that for sure, for sure. We'll get out of here on this one. Um, Lauren, you gave an example, so I don't know if you have another one that you want to share. That's fine too. But have you? I imagine the answer could be yes. But have you personally experienced or witnessed any racism or racist acts? If so, what did you do? Did you speak up on it? Or if you were on the receiving end of it, can you kind of tell me what was your reaction or what happened in that moment?
Like going to Sam's Club, and when you leave, the worker doesn't check the white person's receipt in front of you and you see it, but as soon as she comes to you, she checks yours. But there was another incident my freshman year in college with a person who I consider a friend. Backstory with her, she was from Colorado. Like, she was only around white people all of her life. Her parents were like wealthy, so she came to MSU, and we were hanging out one night, and two of my other black friends were also with me. And she was explaining how she had to do her own laundry. And after she said that, she said, I know, oh my God, I'm like a poor black child. And right then and there, like, when you hear something, you have to like really think about, like, is that really what you just heard? So in the moment, I didn't say anything because, like, I was young, like, I really wasn't aware or like conscious like that. But luckily, one of my other friends did like call her out on it. But just looking back, like, I really wish I would have said something to her because she, the ignorance of just not knowing what's right to say and what's wrong, it was just baffling to
I
me.
feel like there's always a lot of little things that come up. And the sad part is, I think somebody kind of mentioned it, or all of you kind of echoed it, is you just kind of get used to it. And it's a pretty crappy thing to have to get used to. Um, when I first moved to Grand Rapids, actually a couple years after I moved to Grand Rapids, I remember going into a certain store. I won't say the name necessarily, but a certain mart uh, on Alpine that I went into, and there were a group of white individuals that walked in front of me, and the greeter was so pleasant. Hello, good afternoon. I sound like Kevin Hart right now, but they greeted everyone as they came in, and when it got to me, it was just a blank stare. Um, and I'll never forget that. And I've never gone into that store ever since, but I'll never forget it. Another store in that same area, actually. So I'm glad I don't live over there anymore. But another store over there that I went into, um, and I was in there for maybe a good half an hour, and all I needed was someone to help me find a particular pen or marker. I was looking for a particular marker, and I asked about three different associates, all white. And somebody listening to this could be just like, well, it's just coincidence. I doubt it. But I asked each associate for help in trying to find this pen, and they just told me repeatedly, "Well, hold on, we'll be right with you." Never saw him again. Tried to find another one. "Well, hold on, I'll be right with you." Never saw him again. Um, and I asked about 3 to 4 different people. Half an hour later, I never had any help in that store. And it's funny because this store actually ended up making some headlines about being a little on the racist side. So, is it coincidence? Some people might think so, but I refuse to believe that. Um, Also, just sometimes I feel like, you know, I get certain looks based on the way I dress, the way that I carry myself, because it's not what people typically think of when they think of black people, right? Your prototypical, I guess, or your stereotypical black guy doesn't wear chinos, or doesn't wear Oxfords, things like that, or doesn't necessarily have their hair taken care of if you're a lady, or those type of things. It's it's almost as if we've done all the things that you would consider okay, yet you still find a problem. And we're not doing them for you, we're doing them for us, but for some reason we're still not okay with you in your eyes simply based on the fact that we don't look exactly like you. So it's unfortunate to live in a country where white is the standard. Um, and whether it was, Trump's thing or not, that this idea of making America great again, um, sorry, folks, I hate to be the one to burst your bubble, but this country was never that great to begin with. It's unfortunate, and I know I'm kind of going on a rant right now, but it's unfortunate that we live in a country that is, I think, without a doubt, the most blessed nation of all the nations that we could live in. It's a great country, but it's really not as great as many people think it is. Nor have we lived up, or has it lived up to the potential that I think that this country really possesses. So, um, with that, any closing thoughts, any final thoughts anybody has before we get out of here?
Yeah.
When we talked about white privilege, and and also you asked Jamie, Zach, and Justin, what you think they could do. I agree with everything that they said. Um, I was at a concert, and the people in this group, they're all white. And halfway through the concert, they stopped to talk about basically the black and brown struggle and what can be done. So like they do the research. Whatever city they go to, they have um, a list of different organizations that help with the advancement of, I guess, black and brown people, and how you can get involved, how you can donate, how you can get hooked up with these people, and they use the term "spend your privilege" as well. And yeah, what Justin was saying, I'm gonna go to these spaces where they will listen to me. They might not listen to you, you know, um, spaces where, I am welcome because I'm white, spend your privilege. Um, and what Zach was saying, I mentioned it last week, hold your family accountable, hold your friends accountable, the other white people that are in your circle, hold them accountable. So I appreciate that they also touched on that.
I have one last thing. Uh, the another book, I don't know if you guys heard of it, is White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. And that is a book that really talks about the defense mechanism that white people have when talking about race. So it really helps. It just talks about how to deal with those reactions, and so that's usually the first good book for people who you just can't have conversations with, and you just be like, here, read this book, and then come talk to me. Like, that's a good one. But if you've already recognized, like, yes, we need to talk about race, then I would move to the How to Be an Anti-Racist book. But both books are right now bestsellers on Amazon right now, and that's no surprise because of the climate. Because a lot of people, like everyone watching and people that are on this call, are like, we need to figure out how to have this conversation. Like, what do we talk about? So those are two books that I highly recommend, and that is right now kind of like the foundation of what I the work that I do, like, full time. We build off some of those ideas and stuff. So yeah.
Any other thoughts before we close?
Yeah, Lauren's gonna make. I haven't read a book in like 3 years. Lauren, you're gonna make me read all kinds of books.
Get it on the Audible or whatever it's called to listen to it. Then, while you're driving in your car, the book on tape. I'm like you. I haven't really read books, but now I'm like flipping through pages of books that I put down. So I'm with you, Justin. We're here.
I'll close with this. There's a video that's actually circulating, tons of them, right? But there's a bit by a comedian named Michael Shea that's been circulating and resurfaced lately from a stand-up he did a few years back, I believe. And there's a bit in there where he's talking about, the idea or the concept of Black Lives Matters, um, or matters, and so It's an interesting bit. I would definitely check it out for those of you who haven't seen it. Um, but essentially, the point that he's getting at is like we've echoed earlier. We're not saying no one else is, insignificant or that no other lives matters, but Black people are just basically saying we're just trying to get you to recognize that we're important too, right? And the fact that we even have to say that is ridiculous, but because this is where we are, we're just saying we matter. That's it.
I
Simply
can tell
matter.
you it came from a different point of view here, and some of the reason why some people think like that because they don't know any black people, and the only ones I see is LeBron James and Tiger Woods and Barack Obama, right? And those are the only black people they know, or Kevin Hart, like you mentioned, or right? And those that's it. So when we start talking about some of these things to them, that's the black community because that's what they know, right? That's the hardest part to get to.
Well, friends, I appreciate you guys for taking the time out. As I said last week, it hasn't really changed this week, but it's definitely still an ongoing conversation. Um, and I certainly appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to have it with me. I even feel like we made some new friends. So I appreciate you guys so very much. Thanks for joining in with me.